की शुरुआत साल 1976 के स्विट्जरलैंड से होती है। एक ट्रेन अभी-अभी स्टेशन पर पहुंची थी कि अचानक उसे भारी हथियारों से लैंड सैनिकों ने चारों तरफ से घेर लिया।
A train had just pulled into the station when it was surrounded by armed soldiers. Before the passengers could figure out what was happening, all the doors and windows were tightly sealed shut, and no one was allowed to leave, all because a terrifying virus was spreading inside the train. The story takes place in Switzerland in 1976. Three terrorists, planning a terrorist attack, drove an ambulance and disguised themselves as medical personnel to infiltrate the World Health Organization headquarters. But as soon as they entered the building, the guards detected them, and they were cornered in the laboratory where the virus was stored. During the firefight, a vial of the virus was struck, and the liquid splashed onto the terrorist's face. Another terrorist had no choice but to break a window and flee, fearing the virus. The guards dared not pursue him, and could only report the situation to their superiors. Soon after receiving the news, U.S. Army Colonel Mackenzie arrived at the scene. Before long, the terrorist died in a hospital bed. It was only then that Mackenzie confessed to Stradner that another terrorist carrying the virus had escaped. That terrorist had already made it to the train station. He quietly slipped onto a train bound for Sweden. This train would traverse most of Europe. If the virus spread, the consequences would be unimaginable. As the train slowly pulled away, the atmosphere in the carriage was incredibly cheerful. Everyone thought this was just an ordinary trip, unaware that danger lurked right beside them. The terrorist had already begun showing symptoms, thirsty beyond endurance. He picked up the dog's water bowl and inadvertently transmitted the virus to the dog. Yet even after drinking the water, he still felt parched. So he went to the kitchen and turned on the faucet. But then, unable to suppress a cough, he splashed virus-contaminated water onto the rice. Just then, Dr. Chamberlain happened to walk by. When Dr. Chamberlain questioned him, the terrorist said nothing. He silently grabbed a piece of clothing and left the kitchen. The contaminated rice was soon served at the dining table. The clueless passengers ate it, and just like that, the virus began to spread throughout the train. Meanwhile, Mackenzie discovered a ticket from Sweden to Geneva. From this, they concluded that the terrorist was from Sweden. Stradner suggested immediately stopping the train to remove the terrorist and place him under mandatory quarantine. But Mackenzie feared the virus had already spread. No hospital could accommodate over 1,000 infected people. Moreover, he had already contacted the countries along the route, and not a single one was willing to let the train stop there. But surprisingly, after Mackenzie's persistent negotiations, Poland agreed to let them drive the train to a remote area, where there happened to be a World War II-era concentration camp, large enough to quarantine over 1,000 passengers. Although this route had been abandoned for decades, the Polish government said it was passable, with the exception of a single bridge called the Cassandra Crossing, which might not hold due to disrepair, but now they had no other choice. So, without the passengers' knowledge, the train quietly changed course and headed for Poland. Chamberlain's wife, Jennifer, sensed something was wrong. The train didn't stop at the station where it was supposed to, and there was a large gathering of police officers and patrol cars. Jennifer immediately told her husband about it. Just as she finished speaking, someone called him. It was Colonel Mackenzie. They revealed that there was an infected person on the train, and asked for his help in locating the individual, to prevent further spread of the infection. As a neurosurgeon, no one was more qualified than him. When Mackenzie described the infected person's appearance, Chamberlain immediately thought of the man he'd seen in the kitchen. Everyone immediately began searching the train cars. They eventually found the terrorist in a freight car. By then, the terrorist had already stopped breathing. Mackenzie then made an announcement over the intercom, falsely claiming that a terrorist had planted a bomb ahead to ensure everyone's safety. The train was forced to take a detour. Some passengers threatened to file complaints. Meanwhile, the passengers who had eaten the rice began showing symptoms. Chamberlain immediately organized the other passengers to isolate all the sick passengers in a single car. Fortunately, shortly after dark, the train finally arrived in Nuremberg. Heavily armed soldiers were already in position. It was only then that the military informed the passengers of the outbreak of a deadly virus on the train. They were being taken to an abandoned concentration camp. Upon learning the truth, the passengers immediately panicked to prevent anyone from escaping. The military welded all doors and windows shut, though they did provide oxygen for the passengers. Later, Jennifer learned from an elderly man that Cassandra Crossing was unsafe, and that the residents living under the bridge had all been evacuated. Jennifer suspected they intended to use the bridge to stage an accident and eliminate witnesses. so that no one would ever learn of the virus. Soon, they received some good news. The previously infected couple's condition had improved. Chamberlain rushed to the isolation car and discovered that the others had also miraculously recovered. Not only that, but even the dog had become lively again. Stradner soon discovered the reason. It was the high concentration of oxygen that had worked its magic. Stradner excitedly told the colonel that everyone on the train could be saved. She wanted to share this news with Chamberlain, but she didn't know that the communication equipment had been destroyed, and judging by Mackenzie's expression, it was clear he didn't care at all whether the people on the train recovered. He only wanted to cover up the truth about the virus outbreak. Chamberlain also urged the commander to stop the train. Now that the patients were nearly recovered, there was no need to risk crossing the bridge, but even so, the commander refused to stop the train. Since that was the case, they had no choice but to save themselves. Chamberlain secretly gathered a group of people and planned to force the train to a halt. They then detonated a gas cylinder. The violent explosion nearly destroyed the entire dining car. The Cassandra crossing was just a stone's throw away. Seeing this, the conductor decisively pulled the brakes. The rear cars came to a stop without incident, but the front cars were in for a disaster. As expected, the bridge collapsed. Seeing the bridge collapse as planned, Colonel Mackenzie finally breathed a sigh of relief. It was only then that Stradner fully realized that the people on the train had been doomed from the start, but they could never have imagined that most of the passengers had survived. Although the virus could no longer spread, the truth would inevitably come to light.